arts and culture industry in Jacksonville, as we know, took a big hit during COVID-19. Joining me now for an update is Joy Young with the Cultural Council. Thanks so much for talking to us today.
Hello, and thank you so much for having me today to talk about an important part of our community, arts and culture.
Well, I know that when we spoke a few weeks ago, and you also sent out some emails to the community asking for support, because at that time, the arts and culture industry had lost over $1 million, and that was early on in the pandemic. Where do we stand now in terms of losses, or are you getting a gauge of the overall impact now that we're slowly starting to reopen?
Yeah, so overall losses for our arts and cultural industries here in Duval County exceed $5 million. Our institution organizations such as the Symphony that has unfortunately had to furlough employees have really been affected negatively by stay-at-home orders and ensuring safety procedures are in place and really getting back the kinds of donors, sponsors, and audience members that are necessary to keep our arts and cultural organizations alive here in the community. So the effects have continued. Our individual artists are also just really faced with challenges in earning the kinds of income they once did prior to COVID. Singers and musicians who've typically worked on weekends in bars and restaurants and had their gigs, just those things have gone away, and it's we continue to look for ways to support and would ask audiences to join those organizations that have opened already.
So another question I want to ask is playing off of that support from visitors, from audience members, from people who engage in arts and culture in our community. How have donations been over the last few months? Imagine it's tough because I know that people sometimes like to give with a return in mind. So if you're not physically going to a symphony or you're not physically able to go to an art gallery, have you noticed a decline in donations, or have people stepped up to kind of help fill some of that gap?
I have to say that for some of our arts organizations, they've seen tremendous support from the public, and we just thank those members who are giving to the organizations. Some of our smaller and mid-sized organizations are receiving relief funding, so again, that's great. But overall, the kinds of support and giving that we saw pre-COVID, those numbers have gone down, and I truly believe that we will see an uptick as we find new ways of working in this community.
Let's talk about the reopening. We know that some facilities and museums have reopened with different social distancing guidelines. Tell me a little bit about some of the big places that have opened that people are able to go to, and about some of the safety precautions that you guys have put in place.
Definitely. So each organization is really thinking about safety and security and health safety protocols based on the kind of organization. So our museums are really thinking about social distancing and touch. So we know that Mosh, they're open to the public now, and they have some great new summer exhibits. The Beaches Fine Arts, well, they're going to open in August, so stay tuned. We have Riverside Arts Market. They are opening for business now. The Performers Academy, they are having a camp act up. And again, making sure that students are safe and the numbers are smaller are important pieces of safety. I'm also pleased to say that Florida Theater, they're opening July 11th with their first event since the quarantine. Might things change based on our numbers? They might. But slowly but surely, we're seeing our arts organizations opening.
I know that during the pandemic, we have seen performers and curators and different people from our community stepping up with a lot of virtual content to help fill that gap. People are at home, and so a lot of that will continue.
Yes, it will. And knowing that there's so much virtual content out there by local artists, local performers, I'd say to our community, jump in, search for those artists who are doing their shows online or performing online. Take a look at those artists. And of course, we want you to donate. And when those doors open, we definitely want to see people coming back. We'll always make sure, as long as we're in the midst of our pandemic, that masks are being worn, hand sanitizing stations are available. Those standard questions about being in contact with people who may have been exposed to the virus, temperature checks. Our audiences and attendees should expect those kinds of safety protocols because, of course, we want our audience to stay safe.
And Joy, what's the way forward? I know that this has been a big learning curve, and we're still learning, even within our news organization, and different industries are learning and adapting. What's the way forward for arts and culture? Because the arts, music, culture is just a big part of our lives. And I know that when we spoke a few weeks ago, we talked about how there are facets that get us through some of the tough times in our lives. We turn to art, we turn to music, we turn to those things. So what's the way forward? Because we don't know what numbers are going to look like. We can't say what this is going to be like 3 or 4 months from now. What are you telling people? What's your hope?
Well, the hope is that that we get through this without a doubt. But the hope is also that we continue to share this experience creatively, that we look to the arts to help us understand what's happening around us, that we look to the arts and culture to document what is happening. We see local artists, Shawana Brooks and her husband Roosevelt, who are putting out art that speaks to the time. The hope is that those who can give do continue to give to the arts and to their favorite organizations.
And where can people go for more information about the openings and protocols? What's a good site for people to check out for more information?
Our website, culturalcouncil.org, has a page that talks to and speaks to reopenings here in the community. And I would just ask that you also visit the websites of your favorite arts organizations and cultural organizations, our museums. But again, culturalcouncil.org/reopening.
Roy, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.